Hello everyone at home. For some reason today our video at school didn't work, so here we are coming to you after school. We're working today with multiplicative comparisons. I know that sounds like a really scary word or a couple of scary words, but you've actually been doing this already and I will show you how. So getting into what we're studying today, I can tell you what it means to be twice as big, three times as tall, and other phrases like that. So remember I said that we'll talk about what these words mean. Looking at this word multiplicative, if you look at it, you can see the word multiply in here. See, multiply. The Y has been changed to an I because we added a suffix, but here we see multiply. So we're talking about multiplying and we're talking about comparing. So we're comparing what we're multiplying. So when we're doing this, we're using words like this. So first of all, you need your math journals. You're going to be copying this stuff down. So when we are using multiplicative comparisons, we're using things like the word twice or twice as many. When we're talking about twice as many, what are we multiplying by? I hope you remember that we're multiplying by 2. I'm going to use another color so we can keep them separate. Sometimes we'll hear things like this. 3 times as many. Make certain you copy this down. So if we're thinking about 3 times as many, we're thinking about 3 times. We're multiplying by 3. We can also think of that as we triple something. Twice can also mean doubling something. Now, I want you to think about what I've been saying. What are we talking about? So I want you to copy this down as well. When we're talking about multiplicative comparisons, we think about, I'm going to use another color, how many times, I'm going to stick the multiplication sign in there, something is bigger or smaller than something else. You may want to pause the video so that you can copy this down. Okay, now that you've had a chance to copy this down, you need a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, pause the video again so you can get a ruler. Okay, the first thing I want you to do is draw a line that is 2 inches long. I'm going to start it just a little bit into my margin. I'm also going to write that it is 2 inches. Now that you've drawn this, I want you to draw a line that is exactly 3 times as long as the first line. Our first line is 2 inches. I want you to draw a line that is exactly 3 times as long. You can pause the video while you do your work. Now that you're back, I'm going to draw 2 different lines, and I want you to decide which one of these means that it is exactly 3 times longer. This one is 5 inches. This one is 6 inches. Now remember what I asked you. We drew our 2-inch line. Then I asked you to draw a line that is 3 times longer than our 2-inch line. If you came up with 5 inches, this means you did 2 plus 3. We're talking about 3 times as many. Remember, 3 times as many. That means multiply by 3. So we would want to do 2 times 3 to have 6. So this means this one is incorrect. Please remember that the words up here, twice as many, multiply by 2. 3 times as many, multiply by 3. If I said 4 times as many, what would we multiply by? I hope you said 4, multiplying by 4. Okay, we're going to get into some things going on in our workbook now. We'll be doing a lot of pausing as we go through this because as we went through it in class, well, there has to be work time. So you'll need to do this as well. Oh, there's my first paper I want to work with. Okay, so here's our paper. I need to put it in something that I can write on. So, do you remember Jim and the Giant from years gone by? So you have Jim and the Giant. Oh, I see we have a glare. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to change our lights. So I'm going to pause so we can change the lights. There we go. There, that's much better. I don't have to adjust this anymore. And we see we have Jim and the Giant. We have this little guy named Jim. Remember him from last year? Okay. Our first question is this. Sam says the giant is 3 times as tall as Jim. Well, here's Jim. Is the giant 3 times as tall? Yes or no? Do you agree with him? Talk with someone at home. Okay, in class we had some discussions and we decided that to figure this out, well, let's draw some more Jims. Okay, so is he 3 times as tall as Jim? I mean, I drew 3 more Jims. Or do we have to count all of the Jims? Think about it. How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 Jims. So in other words, we have we have 4 groups with 1 in each group. 4 times 1. Remember when we were working with our notebook? 4 times as many would be times 4. See, 3 times as many times 3. Okay, our next step. Remember, we have also started multi-step problems in number corners, so we have to have lots of steps in our problems. It says that Jim, here's Jim, is 48 inches tall. How tall is the giant? How do we figure that out? We can do 4 times 48 equals the giant because 1, 2, 3, 4. So it would be 48 and a 48 and a 48 and a 48. So we have 4 48s. The problem with this is we don't know how to multiply that yet. So we're going to go back to some of the strategies that we already know. So I just turn to the next page. So I have areas to work. So one of the things we learned was a ratio table. So if I have one group of 48, I don't have enough, do I? But I know I can double it because we determined we have to have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. So we have to do 48 4 times. So I'm going to double. What is 48 doubled? Well, I know that 48 is made up of 40 plus 8. So if I have to do 2 48s, I have to do 40 plus 40. So I'm going to write that down. So that's 80. And I have to do 8 plus 8. That's 16. So that gives me 96. Well, that's not quite enough. We're supposed to do 4 of them. So knowing how numbers work, I have a 2. I can double that to 4. If you want to just pause it right now and figure it out on your own, you can. Otherwise, you can continue. And here we go. We now have 96. I know that 96 can be broken into 90 plus 6. Well, now, if I'm multiplying by 2, because I have to double it again. Remember, 4 is a double and then a double, so we call it double. That means I need 2 90s. So what's 90 plus 90? I'm going to write it over here. 90 plus 90 is 180. I need 2 6s. 6 plus 6 is 12. So 180 plus 12 gives us 192. That's how we could figure it out with our ratio table. Other students could or might want to do the number line, where we have to make 4 jumps of 48. Our number line starts at 0. So to 48, that one was easy. So that's 1 jump. Now we have to do another jump of 48. So 48 plus 48. Now we have 2 jumps. Gives us 96. Oh, but this next one's a little harder because we have to do 3 jumps. But couldn't we just do a double jump? 1 jump like this instead of doing this. So now we're doing times 2 again. And we already know that's 192. So we didn't have to deal with that middle number. And then there's a few students who they know how this works. They are just skipping right to the point where they're doing 48 times 4. They're going to split their number into 40 plus 8. And now they're going to distribute. We need to do the 4 times. We have to do times 4 here and times 4 there. So 40 times 4 equals, and 8 times 4 equals. Well, we know 8 times 4 is 32. That one's pretty easy. This one's a little harder. So we can think of 4 times 4, and that's 16. Then some people say add a 0. So what is 16 plus 0? Well, it's still 16. So don't say add a 0. Because if someone's really literal, they'll say, well, 16 plus 0 is still 16. So what you want to say is 4 times 4 is 16. Now we have to do times 10. So 16 times 10 is 160. And now we just add this up. 0 and 2, 60 plus 30, and the 100. Okay, so if you don't understand this, well, a lot of your classmates didn't either. It takes a lot of practice, and it's hard to understand what this is really asking us. Okay, so now we're going to move on to another picture. I do have a larger picture, and we're going to examine this picture first. This is my good copy, so I don't want to write on my good copy. I'm going to tuck it in my plastic again. Okay, so let's do some examining. Okay, so we have that same kind of door that the giant was in before. So let's see. So yeah, just like last time, there was 1, 2, 3, 4 of those little markers. Oh, we've got a dog, giant dog, little kid, giant envelope, more little kids, giant shovel, a giant hammer, a giant rake, and a saw and a ladder, and a watering can. Did you notice that if we look across, well, look at that. We've got kind of like a divisions going on. We've got a layer of bricks and another layer of bricks and another layer of bricks and another layer of bricks. There's our last layer of bricks. Well, we're going to get into what our workbook is asking us to do. So if you haven't done so already, you need to get your workbook out. So you might need to pause the video so you can get your workbook. And the workbook pages you'll be working on are pages 31 and 32. And somehow I have lost page 31. I have 32 in front of me, but I've lost 31. There it is. Okay. So since this is easier to see than our workbook page, see, you have the workbook page. But I'm going to start out with our workbook page. Yes, mine's really little. You'll have to look in yours. And when I see this, I see that it's telling me some information right away. The giant's hammer is 48 inches tall. That's some really important information. Just like when we work with our ratio tables, we have one group of 48. This is very important information. So this is telling us that our hammer is our group, our one group, and it's 48 inches. So using that, we're going to fill in what the rest of the worksheet is telling us. And we'll refer to this because it's easier to see sometimes. So let's bring this in a little closer. And it says, the shovel is how many times as tall as the hammer? Okay, so here's my hammer. Can you see my hammer? I colored it in so I can see it. So there's my hammer. It's that tall. And I need to know about my shovel. How tall is my shovel? Well, I look and there's another layer and there's another. It's there, right there. So I can think about it like this. How many hammers do I need to be as tall as the shovel? So how many times taller is it? So the shovel is how many times taller than the hammer? So I can draw a hammer here. I can draw a hammer here. I can draw a hammer there. How many hammers did I draw? Okay, I drew 3. Now it says we're supposed to make an equation. Well, I see I can use this part already. So here's my 3 times. Do you remember where we get our other number from? Okay, good. You do remember it's 48 equals, well, the shovel. Well, now we're going to have to figure this out. If I go back to this page, we never did 3. So now we have to figure out 3. Can we look at some of the work we've already done to help us figure out 3? If I use my ratio table, I can go over here with a 3. I could do one of 2 things. I hope you're thinking this. I could do 4 minus a group, but I don't like to minus. That takes too long. Could we add these 2 groups together? 1 plus 2 is 3. So if 1 plus 2 is 3 and we're adding on top, that means that we can do 48 plus 96. So let's do 48 plus 96. 8 and 6 equals 14. Carry a 10. Now we have a 10, a 40, and a 90. I know if I put 90 and 10 together, I get 100 plus another 40. There we go. So for those of you who want to continue your number line, we could keep adding our 48s and find out how many 3 48s are. We know this is 2 48s plus another 48. For those of you who are practicing distributing our numbers, we can do 48 times 3. Remember how to break 48 apart into easy to use numbers? We have 40 plus 8, and we still have to do the times 3. So let's get our first number, 40 times 3. We haven't multiplied the 8 yet, so now let's do 8 times 3. Well, the 8 times 3 is a little easier. That's 24. 40 times 3, that's an awfully big number. But remember, we know that 40 equals 4 times 10. So if we do 4 times 8, 4 times 8 is, 4 times 3. I'm in the wrong spot. I'm sorry. 4 times 3 is 12 plus a 0. But remember, if we do 12 plus a 0, that's still 12. So we want to think about it as 12 times 10. There we go. 12 times 10. Now we can add these together. We already know it's 144 because we've added it a few times. So we can finish filling this in. It's 144. 144, and I've been using the inches sign. Okay, I'm going to pull a different color now so that we can see the difference of what we're working on. Now we have to deal with the ladder. Here's our ladder. Our ladder is to that level. It's that tall. And we need to know how many times the ladder is how many times as tall as the hammer. Well, there's my hammer. How many hammers do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. What is our equation? Well, here's the 4 times. So I'm going to write that down. 4 times. And what is the number that we've been using? What is our group? It's 48 equals, we can write the height. Let's write height this time. Okay, now we have to figure out 4 times 48. Again, you can make a ratio table. I know we've done it, and you can go back and look at it, but we could do a ratio table. We can distribute our numbers when we multiply. It's your choice of what to do. Since we are getting so close to learning how to do larger numbers for multiplication, I'm going to do this. 48, I'm going to separate 48 into 40 plus 8. We still have to multiply each of those numbers times 4. Excuse me. So we're doing 40 times 4, and then we have to add 8 times 4. So do you remember what 40 times 4 is? Remember, 4 times 4 is 16, but we can't say add a 0 because that's still 16. So it's 16 times 10. And then 8 times 4. Now we add those together, and we come up with the answer of, or should I say the product of, 192 inches. The ladder is 192 inches tall. Now we're talking about the wooden door. How tall is the wooden door? Oh goodness, look at that. We're now up to there. We got to draw another hammer. How many hammers do we have now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 5 times as many. That's an important number. 5 times, and what's the number we've been working with? 48 equals how tall the door is. Well, what do you want to do to solve this? Here we had 3 times 48. Now we have 4 times 48. Now we have 5 times 48. You can simply add another 48, but you know, we're in 4th grade and we like to do multiplication. So let's think of this again. Let's practice this again. 48 is 40 plus 8. This time we're multiplying by 5. You can do this in your notebook. You can do this on your workbook page. It's wherever you have room. So I need to do 40 times 5 plus 8 times 5. So what is 40 times 5? Well, we know what 4 times 5 is 4 times 5 equals 20. But remember, if you just add a 0, it's still 20. So it is 20 times 10, which gives us 200, plus 8 times 5. And I hope you know what that is. And now we add those two together for 240. Now, teachers like to see all of this work that you do because it helps them know how you are solving your problems. Some students like to erase it all, so they hand in a really neat and tidy paper. But if you're doing this, I can see how you are getting your answers. And that's really important to us teachers. Okay, in class today, we only worked through number 4. And number 4, we found a little confusing because look at this envelope. You see the envelope? The question in our book on the next page, on page 32, says the envelope is how many times as tall as the hammer? But the hammer is taller than the envelope. Look at this. I'm going to draw a line. I know my marker is fat, but can you see that? The hammer is this tall and the envelope is that tall. What do we do with that? So what are you noticing? Here's the hammer's height. There's the envelope's height. Did you notice the envelope is only half as tall as the hammer? Oh my, now how do we write this? Remember, we're supposed to write equations. Okay, let's go back to thinking way back when we were talking about when we cut things in half. If I have a pencil, don't do this at home, and I break it in half, I went from having one piece to having 2 half pieces, correct? I divided it. So if we have 1/2 of something, it's been divided. What is our number we've been working with this whole time? We've been working with the 48 inches because that's how tall the hammer is. So we're doing 48 divided by 2 because we need to cut it in half equals the envelope. So what is half of 48? Do you know? Remember how I've been splitting our numbers apart? Look at this. Here's our 48. We have 40 plus 8. Well, what's half of 40? I think that one we know. So if I would be splitting that apart, I know it's a 20 plus a 20. What's half of 8 if we're splitting that apart? That's 4 plus 4. So if I've got that all split apart, what is half of 40? Is it just 20? 20 plus 20? No, we're going to have to combine from both sides. We need one of these from both sides. So 20 plus 4 is 24. To double check it, let's do the other 24. See this number and this number, that goes, those are up there. These are over here. Adding those together, that's 48. So, okay, we figured out how to split it. So when we make it go in half, it's 24. We divided it in half. So we have 24 inches. Okay. We did not do number 5 in class. We're picking up tomorrow on number 6 and possibly number 7. It depends on our time. Also, in your workbooks, we'll begin with, we're also going to work on page 30. So if you look in your workbooks on page 30, I don't have my workbook handy. Oh dear. if we look at page 30, this is page 30, I want you to give yourself about 5 minutes start on this, unless you really want to work on the whole thing, so that you can work on page 30. And just like the other class, we need to work on this yet. So with that, I'm going to ask you then to work hard. Be patient with yourself. We're not used to the words we were using today, but you have them written down so you can practice. So we'll talk to you again tomorrow. Have a good day.